What's up, guys, and welcome back to weekly quiz number 20. This is the series on YouTube where you get to compare yourself to a bunch of other Chess Vibes subscribers and see how you stack up in solving 3 different positions. If you've already taken the quiz, fantastic. If not, you can jump in on the next one. There's a link in the description below. And of course, you can just pause the video as we go through these positions and follow along that way. This is the first position, but having said that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, real quick before we start, this is the spreadsheet I use to keep track of the data. You can see we had 137 people from 0 to 1,000. We had 240 people from the 1,000 to 1,600 rating range and 105 people above 1,600. So let's go ahead and jump into the positions. All right, this is position number 1. It's white to play. If you'd like to pause and figure out what move you would play, go ahead and do that. Right, and if you had a chance to look at that, let's go ahead and take a look. So in the 0 to 1,000 category, we had the top move being queen to h4, the second move being rook to h7, and the third move being rook d to e1. 1,000 to 1,600, again, queen to h4 was the top move. Again, rook h7 was the second move. And then the third move was knight to h4. And then 1,600 and above, the top move was rook to h7, then queen to h4, and then knight to h4. All right, so in this position, the first thing we should notice is that the H file is open and our rook is already there. And I think most people did notice that. And that's why queen h4 was a highly suggested move. Now, generally speaking, this is a great idea. Like queen h4, you're creating the battery with the rook and the queen. You're coming down to potentially deliver the checkmate. The problem is in this case, queen to h7 is not checkmate, right? So let's just say black plays a move d4, starting to go on the offensive. Yes, we can come down to h7. We can't go to h8 because the bishop would just take the queen. But after we go to h7, the king slides over. And now it's like, okay, what do we do next? I mean, you can't go there. You can't really do anything with your queen. You can't really get to the king. And the problem is that now black's going on the offensive, right? Like we can defend our knight here that's being attacked, but black's going to probably just trade here and even bishop takes f3 and then queen d5, and black is the one who has all the threats. And our queen is sitting over here, but we don't really have a way to break through. You know, we can do this because it's pinned, but then we lose our rook and black's just winning. So that was the problem with queen to h4. So very tricky position because normally in a lot of cases, this is exactly what you want to do. But in this case, we had to see far enough ahead to notice that there's just no follow-up after our queen gets to h7. Now, real quickly, let me talk about knight to h4. Knight to h4 is kind of a middle-of-the-road move. It's not a terrible move, but it doesn't really cause black too many problems. So like after d4, unleashing the bishop, and I guess people's idea probably was to sacrifice here is what I'm guessing. But after you do that, black can just kind of ignore it, you know, take over here, and then just, I don't know, queen d5, just place a move because we don't really have a solid threat. Like we're not really threatening anything because this bishop is doing an amazing job defending. So that's why those two moves didn't work. So for everyone who found rook to h7, and by the way, I have to say, I'm a little bit suspicious that 9% of players under 1,000 found this move. So I don't know. We might have to do a little test position, one of these quizzes, just to see if anybody's actually using Stockfish. So keep your eyes open for that. I'm not promising that I'm going to do that, but I just might because I'm a little bit skeptical. That being said, if you're under 1,000 and you did see the idea behind this move, well, congratulations. There's a couple of points. The first point is that if black takes it, they basically lose immediately because we play queen takes f7, and now the king is completely shut off from escaping, and the simple threat of rook to h1 followed by rook takes check. Well, that can't even move, so it's just rook to h1. It's checkmate, and black has no way to stop it. I mean, they can throw in some random, you know, moves that don't really do anything, but otherwise it's just game over. So that's the first point. And, you know, maybe some of you guys did see that, but the other point behind this move is that if black, let's just say, plays d4 and kind of continues, there's this crazy sort of line, bishop to c4, going for this pawn, and if black, let's just say, tries to defend, you've got queen to h2, so it's sort of reversing the order of the battery, so you have the rook in front of the queen instead of the other way around, and there's a very important reason for that. So let me show you. Bishop takes f3, taking the free knight. You're going to sacrifice the rook for the bishop, and after the king takes, the queen is going to infiltrate. King has to go back. You're going to take here with check because the pawn is pinned. And then after the king moves, you're going to go check and play g6. And you've got an unstoppable mating attack. Even though, you know, black is sort of, winning all your pieces, it doesn't matter. You're getting checkmate here, right? G7 checkmate with the pawn. So that's pretty nice. Very difficult idea to see, I think, for a lot of people. And so congratulations if you did find rook to h7. Not an easy move to find. Now, I think some people maybe sort of just saw the initial idea and didn't see all that follow through is what I'm guessing. So you probably saw like, okay, if the king takes, we take here. And you just figure like, hey, it's in an aggressive position. You're going to have a nice attack otherwise, which if that's what you thought about, hey, that's good logic. So anyway, congratulations to everyone who got rook to h7. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we can see here that rook h7 is the only move that keeps the advantage for white. If you play knight h4 or queen h4, black is going to have a slight advantage against knight h4 and actually a big advantage against queen h4 for the reasons that we mentioned. All right, here's position number 2. It's black to play. If you haven't already done the quiz and you'd like to pause and think through what you would play here, go ahead and do that now. Right, and if you had a chance to do that, let's go ahead and take a look. So 0 to 1,000, we had the top move being queen to b1 check, second move being knight to e3, and then the third move being bishop to d4 check. 1,000 to 1,600, the first move was bishop to d4 check, the second move was knight to e3, and the third move was queen to b1 check. 1,600 and above, the top move was bishop to d4 check, second move knight to e3, and then third move was rook to e2. All right, so in this position, the only good move for black was bishop to d4 check. And if you see the idea behind this move, it's actually not very difficult to understand. But if you don't see the idea, then it's very weird, right? Because normally we don't want to be moving pieces where they can just get captured by pawns. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But in this case, there's a very specific reason. And the point is that if white does take that, this pawn is actually now blocking the queen and rook from defending. And now the move queen to b1 is so much better than before. And the king is actually stuck. The only thing white can do is block with one of these pieces, but you simply sacrifice and game over to the kind of a back rank checkmate of sorts. So that's the point. Like, we don't want the queen and the rook to be able to stop us. So for everyone who said queen to b1 check initially, it's a good idea, but white just simply plays queen to d1. And now what are you going to do? I mean, the game goes on, but white's still in the lead. So that's the problem, and that's what bishop to d4 check solves. And by the way, if the knight takes, same exact thing. These pieces are being blocked off, and again, queen to b1 is what we can play. And of course, if the queen takes, well, now we're not going to play queen b1 anymore because the queen can still go back, but we simply take the queen, right? And we win a queen. So that was the idea. You know, now that I explain it, it's probably like, oh yeah, it's pretty obvious, but those are the kind of things that if you haven't seen that type of tactic before, you might have had a rough time finding this one, right? So keep in mind that, you know, the pieces that can defend in certain situations, sometimes instead of like capturing them, you can just block them off. If you can block off the diagonal, or in this case, block off the file, that's a totally acceptable way of kind of eliminating the pieces from defending the king. All right. And then I think there was one more move. Let's see, knight to e3. Some people said knight to e3 actually looks like a good idea because you're sort of forking the queen and the pawn here, setting up checkmate. So I like the idea. But after queen to d3, white's pinning your queen, and so you can't follow through. They're going to force a queen trade, or if you try rook e4, let's see, white has a move. Yeah, g3. White just plays g3, and it kind of shuts down your attack, and white is still better. So nice idea, but it just doesn't quite work. So congratulations to everyone who found bishop to d4 check. And again, 14% of players under 1,000. I mean, I'm a little bit suspicious. If you are under 1,000 and you found this, maybe write a comment and let me know, like, hey, I found it legitimately and I didn't cheat, just so I know. Because, yeah, I'm getting a little bit suspicious, but I don't know. Maybe you guys are just really working on your tactics. That could be a legitimate reason. And real quick, you can see Stockfish saying bishop d4 check, only move which is completely winning from black, and then queen b1 and knight e3, white has a pretty significant advantage. All right, so here's position number 3. If you'd like to pause and think through what you would play, go ahead and do that now. And if you had a chance to do that, let's go ahead and take a look. So from 0 to 1,000, we had the top move being f4, the second move being king to b4, and the third move being rook to b1. And if you notice anything about that, well, let's keep going. 1000 to 1600, top move was f4. Second move was rook to b1, check. And third move was king to b4. Let's keep going. Certainly we won't see the same issue in 1600 and above, right? Top move, king to b4. Second move, f4. Third move, rook to b1, check. So I was amazed, actually, to see this. But in all three categories, we had quite a few people. I won't mention any names. I don't actually know your names. But quite a few people saying rook to b1, which, of course, it's an illegal move. We're in check. We can't move the rook. So nice idea. I mean, I get the idea. You're like, oh, it's basically checkmate. The queen's going to have to sacrifice, except we can't do it. So really just leaves us two moves to talk about in this position, f4 and king to b4. Now, the reason I picked this position is because it's totally winning for black. It's minus 68, minus 69, completely winning. But in the game, the person played king to a3. And as soon as you play that, now it's actually a draw, okay? And so I thought it was really interesting how you can completely give away such a huge advantage with one wrong move, okay? So first of all, let's talk about f4, and then we'll come back to why king a3 is wrong, and then we'll also kind of talk about king b4. So f4 is the correct move, and the reason is very simple. Let's just say that white decides to push the pawn, and we get this pawn race. White can't go anymore. We're going to get a queen, so they need to take us. But as soon as the queen leaves, now we have the checkmate that some of you guys mentioned, right? And it's no longer an illegal move because the queen's gone. It's just game over. So by pushing the pawn, white just is out of options. They can't really defend everything, right? If they come over here and get the pawn, then they're leaving their king in trouble. And if they try to save the king, then the pawn just keeps going. So that's the simple, easy way to win. Now, king to a3 actually is kind of interesting. So what white can do is play queen to c1 check, force your king to move back, and then they can start pushing their pawn. And now if we go for the same sort of race, pushing our pawn, look what happens. We push it, and now white gets the queen first. And I mean, we can go there, but we don't have the same position. It's not checkmate anymore, right? Now we can still get into an okay position like this, check, king goes back, check, king goes here. We can take the queen, but now look at this. Queen takes our knight with check, and apparently this is a draw. But if black doesn't play like perfectly, then it's actually going to be a win for white. So that's kind of the problem. By wasting even just that one move and not pushing that pawn immediately, it was just fast enough. But if you even wasted one move, you're kind of in trouble. Now, king to b4, going back to the original position here, king to b4 is actually still a winning move for black. It's just not quite as winning. And it's because now white can take the pawn here. This is a move, but it's not checkmate. And if this happens, it's going to actually be a draw because this pawn, or I guess it's a draw. Maybe white's winning. I'm not actually sure. So what you have to do is play rook a3. It's kind of confusing. You come down here, check, and then you bring your king up. But you can see how this is much more messy. And Stockfish says with perfect play, it's still going to be a win for black. But like losing that pawn, it's not an easy position. So all that to say, the easy way to win was f4, just push the pawn, and it's too much for the queen to handle all at the same time. And the other kind of key takeaway, I guess, is that you're not allowed to move pieces that are pinned if it puts your king in check. So for everyone who didn't know that, well, now you know. Learn something new every day, I guess. No, but it's seriously, let's go ahead and take a look at Stockfish. You can see f4 minus 69.5, king to b4 is minus 5.1, and then king a3 is the draw. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed those positions. As always, there's a link in the description for next week's quiz. Make sure you fill that out so I have data to use for these videos. Makes it more fun and interesting for everybody. And of course, if you happen to miss it, it's not a big deal. You can always just follow along and jump in on the next one. All right, last thing I want to mention in our game, where I'm playing you guys in the comments section, the highest voted move was d takes e5, and so I recaptured with d takes e5 as well. So here is the position. It's your move. Vote in the comments what move you'd like to play next. And having said that, stay sharp, play smart, and take care.